For those of you who heard my address on, Thursday, it seems like about 3 weeks ago, you understand what role Dr. Chuck Levy played in developing the Transverse Myelitis Association and starting the Transverse Myelitis Association Medical Advisory Board. So I'm not going to go through that whole story, and in fact, Dr. Levy hasn't seen it, so his assignment is go watch the videos on the internet 3 months from now. But Dr. Levy has become a very dear friend of Pauline and myself, and a wonderful friend of the association and the people in our community. And it's really an honor for me to introduce all of you to Dr. Levy this morning.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks for whoever's out there that's doing the whooping. I have an idea who that is. I'm going to talk to you today, and also thank you for attending. This lecture has the potential to be very dry and boring. I'll do my best to not make it too much that way, and let's just leap into it. So 2 years ago, I talked to you a little bit about power assist wheelchairs, which had just hit the market, and since then we got some NIH funds and actually studying power assist wheelchairs. And I thought that, so we're 1 year into a 2-year study, and so I can't really report the results of the study in a definitive way because they're not definitive yet. So I'm going to give you some of our preliminary findings, which I may repeat are preliminary. They aren't statistically significant, but they're going to give you a flavor of what we've been seeing. And I also thought it might be interesting, since you've gotten exposed to so much molecular science, I'm going to try to take you along with me as we thought out how to do a trial that had to do with human beings as they wheel through life. So I have the thank you slide. I've got a great team of folks who are fun to work with and have been very supportive to me, including sending me emails through the last couple of days at the conference as I update the presentation you're going to see now. So I wasn't sure if it would be obvious to all of you why this is relevant to you here. So you come to me as a medical professional looking for help, and medical professionals typically can offer a couple of different types of help. The thing that you want the most, and I understand this, is you want me to take your disease away. And I'm not going to be able to do that today, and hopefully this group will be able to make real impacts on that in the near future. If I can't take your disease away, then I think you typically want me to help you get better, help restore your function. And typically we do that by trying to figure out how to make your body work better, how to make your body stronger. And we use drugs and we use different kinds of exercise. And then the third approach that we have to help you live better is to try to bridge the gap between your bodies, which aren't working the way they used to, and the things you want to do, and we fill that gap with equipment. And this talk is about equipment. So I'm going to start off by talking about the methods of studying equipment for people with disabilities, and then I'll give you a little bit of our preliminary results. So how do I start the video? Do I hit the red button? So here's a fellow wheeling in grass. He's a friend of mine. He's lost both legs, and he has lupus. And the wheelers already know that wheeling in grass is something you probably don't do because it's too hard. But for people who are used to being able to walk, I thought it'd be useful for you to see how difficult wheeling can be. And next slide, let's see. Go ahead. So this looks better. There's still some forward trunk flexion, but clearly there's an ability to get around an environment that was hard a moment ago in a different wheelchair. some of the imbalance in the wheelchair, it's not the motor's fault, it's the fact he doesn't have much legs in front to put on the footrest. So this thing here is a battery, and this thing here is a motor. So he's got a power assist wheelchair, which means every time he pushes the push rim, it signals the battery to discharge a little bit, which signals the motor to give some power output, and it only lasts for a set amount of time. This system is the Alborz e-motion wheel. Alborz is a German company. In the U.S., it's marketed by Frank Mobility, which I think is out of Pennsylvania. And just because I like movies, here's another one. Here's Gravel. Ooh. Okay. I want you to watch the end of this video because he gets stuck. And watch him lift the wheelchair out of the wheels. Looks like he's going to hop the wheelchair through the gravel. Okay. So we didn't want to show you any more. Ooh la la. Okay, so that's power assist wheels, and we could talk about this for a long time, but we won't right now. So then the question, so it looks like, at least by just looking at them, they look like a pretty good idea, and maybe everybody should have a set who wheels. But if we're going to be able to, but we don't really know that. We certainly are going to have to make a persuasive case if insurance companies are going to pay for them. So I guess the questions that come to me as a researcher is, how do you study, PAPAW stands for Push Rim Activated Power Assist Wheelchairs. How do you study these power wheels? And how do you figure out as a clinician when someone comes into your clinic if these type of wheels are good for them? So before I go further, just as an experiment, if you were the researcher and you saw these wheels and you wanted to study them, how would you study them? What outcomes would you use? I'm looking for volunteers. Yeah, go ahead. I couldn't hear what you said. Okay, well, you take the wheels off and you put them in, or you have a lift, and we can talk about that a little later. So what would be a relevant outcome? Okay, how do you measure if life is easier? Okay, so there's quality of life scales. That's one way to look at it. Well, I won't thank you for doing that. Let me show you how we started to approach this. The typical way to look at these things is to use a medical model. You look at, is there a physiologic difference? Are there psychological differences? So if you're going to study something like this in the short term, and the things that you can look at in a medical model are things like pain, fatigue. Does it change somebody's mood? Are you sad in your manual chair and you get power assist wheels? Does that make you happy? And if so, for how long? And how do you perform in it? Do you go further? And if you had a chance to really study this for long term, you could look. Most people think that long-term wheeling wears down your shoulders, so maybe if you're not pushing on your shoulders as much, you'd have less shoulder damage. Maybe you could study that with MRIs or X-rays. And that's really the level that most interventions are studied at. So we used an instrument called the Wheelchair User's Shoulder Pain Index, and this is what we found for 9 patients. And this is before they get their power. So the design of the study, is we're looking for full-time wheelers, and they have to demonstrate to us that they have a method of loading the power assist wheels. If they can't load the power assist wheels, then they can't be in the study. So we measure different things with them for 4 weeks in their own chair. Then we give them power assist wheels and study them for 4 weeks in power assist wheels, and then another 4 weeks in power assist wheels, and then we take them away and we measure them for another 4 weeks in their own manual wheels. And so they started with a shoulder pain index of 8, then they got the power assist wheels and went up to 11, and then that's after 4 weeks. After 8 weeks, they're at 7.4, and then you take them away and they go back up to 8.4, which for a number of reasons is not very exciting, one of which is the pain scale is from 0 to 120. So this amount of variation isn't a whole lot of a variation. So if your outcome, if your hypothesis was power assist wheels are good because they take away shoulder pain, then you would conclude that, hey, they didn't take away shoulder pain if these results hold true. So therefore, power assist wheels aren't very useful, and insurance companies ought not pay for them. So what I'm trying to illustrate here, perhaps, is that using a medical model alone might not be appropriate for interventions that are supposed to improve function. So we wanted to use a model that was greater or more inclusive than the medical model. So we went to the International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health, or the ICF model. And it says that you have medical and social components of life, and you put them together. And 3 ways that you can look at how people live is that they have body function and structure, which we've already talked about. They have activity and participation. So body functions are the physiological and psychological things about your body, how your heart pumps, and the things about mood and affect that can be measured. Body structures are, do you have all your limbs or don't you? Organs are, is your liver working, isn't it working, to what degree? They define activity is defined as activity is the execution of a task or action by an individual, and participation is involvement in a life situation. And then in their own guidelines, they say, well, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between these. To put it on a larger scale, here's your health condition, here's your transverse myelitis, your DEVIX, your MS, and then here's your levels of functioning. It makes, on a body level, it makes you weak. So in terms of activities that you can do, you used to be able to walk 4 miles, and now you have a hard time wheeling a half a mile. And because of that, the fact that you used to go to parties all the time, and now you can't get there. So these things are interrelated. And then they're also impacted by where you live and what things are around you and who you are. So if you live at the bottom of a valley, so here's this valley and you're at the bottom and you're a wheeler, and the slope is 60 degrees, you ain't going anywhere because you can't do it. And even though you're really super motivated, you can't do it. Or maybe you're so super motivated that you can. Anyway, these things interplay, and they're worth studying. So if we think activity and participation, just the way I look at activity is your physical body doing stuff. And participation is when you get there, what did you do, and who did you do it with? I look at participation as being involved in social life. So if those are important to look at, then how are you going to actually measure them, which was a question that you raised. And there's a couple of different methods. You can use surveys where people fill out a set of questions. And those are usually pretty quick. They're usually pretty easy. They're easy to standardize the responses to. But they typically depend on recall in this type of setting. And there are biases that people might bring to the task. They might want to make you happy. They might want to make sure you know that they're miserable. And so they tell part of the story. If you're interested in participation, and that means where people went and what they did, you can have them fill out logs and tell you that. But if you've ever filled out a log for a period of time, it gets easy to stop filling out the log or say you'll fill it out tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow morning, and now it's 3 days later, and now should I admit that I really have no idea of what I did for the last 3 days, or should I make up some stuff so I don't have to admit that I don't remember what I did? So another way to look at the activity side of the picture is to use odometers. You can put an odometer on a wheelchair. This is a high-tech Target-style bicycle odometer. And you put a little connector sensor on the wheel and another pickup, and every time the wheel moves, it tells you how much distance you've gone. And the advantage is then is that you have an actual objective measure of somebody's physical activity. And they're not very expensive, but it doesn't tell you where they went. And you have to always find a way to get the information off the odometer. And there's actually a third problem with power assist. If power assist wheels allow you to go uphill across the grass, and your manual wheelchair you had to go around the block, then when you put the power assist wheels on, maybe you travel less distance because you can get there more directly. So is traveling less distance mean that you're doing more or less? You can't really know. You would, conversely, you're not so tired, so you travel twice as far. So having distance is a hint of useful, but you kind of have to know the context in which the distance is traveled. This is a data logger. This is from the Human Engineering Research Laboratory in Pittsburgh. And it's a small device that fits on a chair and will tell you distance and also tell you time. Every time the wheel moves, it clocks in what time it was. And here's a commercial data logger. They cost about $200. One of the advantages of the commercial data logger is they're set up so you can download the information into a computer in a standardized fashion. They tell you absolute time. They tell you when things happen. They tell you relative distance. The Pittsburgh model has about 750 miles memory capacity, but you can't get one unless you belong to the Pittsburgh group. For me, that's a problem. The commercial ones download, but we're not sure if they're sturdy enough because wheelers who are active beat the hell out of their chairs. So then the next level is global positioning devices. So they're pretty cool. They actually tell you where people went. And some of them are set up so they send a signal to a satellite so you can get the data without actually going to them and downloading the data. And they actually kind of tell you where that distance took place. You can lose signal for a number of reasons. If someone goes inside a building, you can lose signal. And you end up with a whole bunch of data, and you have to figure out what to do with the data. So what that was supposed to be was to get you thinking about how you would actually measure outcomes for people if you gave them an intervention that was supposed to improve their ability to function. So now I'm going to tell you about the outcomes we chose for our study where we use power assist wheels. First of all, under the body function and structure, under the medical model, we thought that if you gave somebody a power assist wheel, it might cause them to have less pain, so we used the wheelchair user's shoulder pain index. We thought it might brighten them up, so we used the positive and negative affective states survey. The SF-36 is a quality of life survey, and it's got different subscales that can be useful. And we also wanted to see how people operated in the laboratory. In terms of activity and participation, we chose a survey called the DLER, the Physical Activity Scale for Individuals with Physical Disabilities. We used odometers and a global positioning device. And now I'm just going to tell you about these measures just in case any of you ever were going to do your own studies. You might go, oh, well, maybe we could use that measure, or at least these measures are out there. So the daily life events checklist revised, this is an example of what's on this survey. For daily events, please rate those events that happened to you since you awoke this morning. For these events that occurred, complete the rating scale next to the event. Don't write anything if you didn't experience it. And then you rate, it gives you a list of events that could happen, and then you rate the events basically on were they good or bad, and you have a 6-point rating scale. Listening to this could be a 6. So then within the scale, this is something, one of the subscales has to do with work. So here's some items from work. Did you have a positive emotional interaction or a happening with coworkers? Did you have negative interactions. Did you fire someone? And then if these things happen, you check them, and then you rate them from 1 to 6. So some of these things, if it's positive, you'd figure, well, that must be a positive thing. But firing somebody, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. You could enjoy firing people. You could be getting rid of somebody that's been tormenting you. Or you could hate firing people. You could be Sandy Siegel and be crying about it. I say that with love, as you know. And then there's some disability-specific items on this, on the DLER. So it gives you a cumulative score of the amount of positive things that are happening and the amount of negative things that are happening on a daily level. So if you give power assist wheels, does that mean you have more happy things happening and less sad things, or that you assign your life to more happy values and less sad values? Well, we didn't know that, but maybe. So that's one of the items we use. It's a good instrument. Tells you information on a daily level, but it takes about 20 minutes to fill, though it gets easier with time. The physical activity scale for individuals with physical disabilities is a scale that actually looks at energy use. So here's an item from it. During the past 7 days, how often have you done light housework, such as dusting, sweeping, etc.? Never. All the way down to often. And then how many hours do you spend doing this? And we actually have estimates of how much energy it takes to dust. So if you're spending more than 4 hours dusting, you make me nervous, but we also have some idea of how much metabolic energy that costs. Here's leisure time activities. They work the same way. So you tell us what you've been doing and how much time you've been spending at it, how much time have you been chopping wood, and we can get an estimation of how much energy you're using. If you use a power assist wheelchair and maybe it's saving energy on your shoulders, do you have more energy to do stuff in your daily life? It's, again, a good scale. It's disability specific. There are other you still need to use recall, but we think it's a reasonable choice for the types of things we're looking at. Global positioning devices. You can make your own or you can buy one. Which do you think this is? Okay, this is our lab's attempt to make a global positioning device for wheelchairs. This pad fits under the cushion so that the device doesn't get turned on unless someone's sitting in it. So if somebody puts your wheelchair in your car and drives it around, you don't get mileage for that. You have to actually be sitting in the chair. It's got a card that's hard to see. It's the same kind of card that you would have in a camera to store your pictures on. And there it is, attached in a little pack to a wheelchair. There's a little antenna on top. And this is the kind of data you get out. So doing nothing, every 12 seconds or so, you get a different latitude and longitude. And since you all know what the map of the world is, if I give you 4 digits, 2 decimal points of latitude and longitude, we can tell you exactly where you are. Here's a commercial GPS system. This one's from Verify. And I'm just going to show you pictures. This one is designed for kids, and it's got a little GPS chip here, and it's got some other features that we don't need for ours. It's got a little lock here, so you can lock it on your kid's arm so that you know where they are and so they don't take it off and put it on the dog and then go running around. So that could be good for us. We could lock it on the wheelchair. And then it sends data by satellite. It sends data up to a satellite, then you can gather the data by going onto a website and typing in a code specific to that device. And this is what the data looks like. Or was this NSA? I can't remember. And if you're not great at telling locations from geographic satellite, this gives you a map. So overall, in this paradigm, here's what we saw as challenges and possible solutions. How to appreciate and quantify the impact of mobility equipment. we thought that the ICF model gave you a good idea of how to structure your approach. You can look at the impact on body structure and function. You can look at activity. You can look at participation. Again, a power assist wheel might have impacts on all of those things. And how to measure activity and participation, we thought that using a combination of surveys, logs, and global positioning devices was a reasonable approach. Here's challenges that we still are working on. Which logs, which surveys? If you use a global positioning device, how do you know that you've got a significant difference? If you went to 3.2 places on the average with your manual wheelchair and you went to 3.6 places on average with your power assist wheelchair, is that significant? I don't think we have an answer to that yet. So I'm going to now shift gears and give you some preliminary data from our study, which has 9 subjects in it so far. This is the SF36, and this is actually, it says physical function. It's a physical health subscale and a mental health subscale. And when people use the power assist wheelchair here and here, their physical function, physical health assessments were better, and they got worse when they went back into their own manual chairs again. That looks like a good thing. In mental health, it looked like they were at a certain level, then they got the power assist wheelchair, it didn't change, then they had it for 8 weeks, it didn't change, and then got rid of it, and they were really happy. So somebody asked about lifts. So one of the ways we looked at it is, does it make a difference if somebody has a lift or not? So with a car lift is blue, and without a car lift is pink, and the curves look pretty much the same. But when you get to the mental health subscore, if you don't have a car lift, you get kind of low when you have this power assist wheelchair, because assumably they're hard to deal with. But if you do have a car lift, well, it's a little inconvenient at first, and then you get used to it, and then you're a little better. Now, in both cases, when you're done with it, you still seem better overall. We don't have significance, same caveat, but interesting. Shoulder pain, I already showed you. Basically, we don't have much to say about it at this point with this study. Life satisfaction, for the whole group, it went up 4 weeks, not much change. 8 weeks, they're improved. Get rid of the power assist wheelchair, and they're a little bit better. But the people without car lifts go down, while the people with car lifts generally go up. Yeah? The wheels are the same size. The wheels. So the question is, could the shoulder pain have to do with different body mechanics? Maybe. I think it also has to do with the wheels weigh about 30 pounds apiece. So if you don't have a lift, you have to sling 30 pounds of wheel across your body into your car every time you go someplace. And that's a pretty large biomechanical stress. I don't have the shoulder pain broken down by lift and not lifts. I'm not sure that most people push on the wheels as opposed to the push rim. I think some people do, and some people do some of the time. I don't think we observe them coming into our study as being wheel pushers, because if they don't push a push rim naturally, they can't really get in the study. And we haven't rejected anyone for that reason. In terms of affect, this is negative events. So how much are you assessing that there are negative events in your life? And this is in their own chairs, power assist, and back in their own chairs. So their amount of negative events go down when they get the power assist, and their assessment of positive events goes up. But when they get back in their own, it doesn't completely reverse. And I don't know, is this kind of readable? Good. Okay, this is the slide that you're never supposed to use because it's got a lot of data. So these are our 9 subjects. And we did qualitative interviews, which means we sit down with the people and in a structured, semi-structured fashion just talk to them about their experiences. So this column is, did they like the power assist wheelchair or not? And what you find is that there are 3 people who really didn't like it. There are 2 people who were plus minus, and I think 4 people who actually did like it. And then we asked them, we looked to see if they had some way of loading their chairs. So curiously, people who had no lift, hey, they all come up with a negative assessment. People who had a lift either had a positive or a plus-minus assessment. We also looked at, we had them do tasks in our lab. So we had them wheel up an incline, we had them wheel on carpet and some other things. And then we ranked them, who came in, who did fastest and who did slowest, and then we averaged those ranks. So this guy was the fastest, which would make you say he's the most able, capable person. And this person came 8.8 out of a possible scale of 9. So this person is the slowest. And what you find is that the more able people also tend to have negative assessments, and the less able wheelers tend to have positive assessments. Time since injury doesn't have a clear connection. Age, maybe a little bit towards the younger, don't like power assist wheels. So I just tell you this to give you a flavor that this stuff is complex. So maybe it's all obvious to you say, oh, of course you can't lift the power assist wheelchair in your car, you're going to hate it. But we actually didn't know that before. And so Medicare gives equipment, wheelchairs, but it doesn't give lifts. The VA does. So maybe the question the clinician has to ask the patient is, do you have a way to lift this thing in if I prescribe it to you? And if they say no, you say you can't have it. From what people actually told us, our stronger, more able wheelers, some of them could overpower this chair. They're used to flying down a ramp at 6 miles, 8 miles an hour, and the power assist wheelchair actually started to slow them down. They were annoyed by loading it. And I can tell you more about some of their individual reactions if we have time or some other time. So that's my Gator Slide. I have a follow-up Gator Slide. This is a real gator that I saw and took a picture of. And there it is in perspective with the turtle that was also on the log. So thank you very much.